And welcome into the New England Hockey Journal's RinkWise podcast as fall hockey gets underway and people are back at rinks all across the region, the country. I am Evan Marinofsky, joined by Patrick Donnelly as always. Pat, what's up?
Not much. The best way to spend a Sunday in Foxborough is at the Foxborough Sports Center. Naturally, as fall hockey's in full swing, so it's good to have the schedule picking up again.
It is. And no one knows that schedule better than our guest today. Quite the long list of accomplishments. Played at Northeastern from 2001 to 2005. Very accomplished career. Spent time in the AHL before playing over in Europe. He's been a college assistant for quite a while, most recently at Northeastern, but as of last week, has a new job. You're looking at the USA Hockey Director of Player Development for Massachusetts and New England Districts. That is Jason Guerriero. Jason, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be on. Obviously, I see you guys in the rinks a lot. I didn't see you in Foxborough this weekend, but I was in the hockey rink, but I was coaching 6U and 10U hockey, my boys hockey. So I was in different rinks, but I know that circuit well for sure.
It's a little,
Nice.
the 6U and 10U is a little outside of our coverage zone, but someday those kids will be right in our targets. Yeah, I was at Lovell on Saturday, and you always know it's the time of year when you're in rinks a lot because the next morning you wake up sort of congested, which I think you can kind of hear with me today. And Lovell is freezing. That place, Pat, you've always said it. That place is all of the rinks there are ice boxes.
Well, I hadn't been there until a couple weeks ago for the Naha tournament and wore shorts the first day, and that was not a good call.
Yeah, that is quite the call. I had to run to the car and get a coat. But Jason, you recently transitioned jobs. You were an assistant at Northeastern for 2 seasons. You move into this role with USA Hockey. Talk to us a little bit how this role came about and what this role will entail.
Yeah, so for me, like I've been invested in USA Hockey since I started coaching. 13 years ago, just trying to get in, selfishly for recruiting reasons, but for me, like as a player, I actually had I was very fortunate to play for, now it's called the World Junior A Challenge. Back then in 1999, I was selected to wear the jersey it was called the Viking Cup. So putting those colors on, wearing Team USA, it's just something that's, very special to anybody, right? So to me, from that moment on, I was like, man, I love everything about USA Hockey. My birth year, the 81 and 80 birth year, was when the national program started, when Jeff Jackson and Bob Mancini started it way back when. And then getting into the coaching and being the director of the boys player development on ice for New England for the last 9 years, quietly doing that so I don't get those emails from the parents. But love doing that. Obviously, coaching Team New England the last 2 years for the 17s, representing the district the way it was when I used to play. It used to be the 15s and 16s and 17s districts used to play against districts. Bringing home the gold with that. Last year with Jeff Giuliano, who was the head coach at UNH, he was the head coach for the New England team, won bronze, getting asked to coach the youth Olympic team. These are all opportunities that USA Hockey has given me, and it's hard to say no to USA Hockey. It's the same thing when kids get selected for the national program. It's really hard to say no. I get people have decisions they need to make, but I've been invested in it so long, and it was the right time, right opportunity, and it's people that I know already. Actually, my best man at my wedding, Rich Hansen, who's in the kind of the same role that I am with USA Hockey, is working for USA Hockey. So it's just kind of lining up. Obviously, sad day for the Guerrero family because, I met my wife there. She was a pole vaulter there. I'm a decorated alum there, was just inducted to the Hall of Fame, all those good things. So, and my kids want to go to games. I said, they still can go to games, but we can watch it from a different angle now, or I can. So great opportunity. And I'm excited for it. And I started last week, and it's kind of, I head out to Colorado for our meetings, but I'm hitting the ground running.
And so in this, because I see you in Buffalo, I've seen you in Buffalo the past 2 years. It's always a fun time at that rink. But throughout the year, what will you sort of be doing? What will you have your hands in? Because I know we talk a lot. You're very passionate about development, which we'll get to in the show. But sort of what will this new job entail?
Yeah, so a lot of it's hands-on, right? And I'm gonna get more of exactly what it is I'm doing. I mean, I have a very good idea, but until you're in the trenches, you don't really know, right? It's the same thing when I remember when I was like playing and I went right into college coaching. I was like, I know what I'm doing, and then I realized I actually don't know what I'm doing. I need to figure this out. Um, so it's the basically dealing from the bottom to the top of development and making sure that we're doing the right thing and following that model that USA Hockey's created, which is awesome because for me, that's what created me as a 5'6" player that can play at the highest level, almost the highest level. Is development. It's just constantly changing kids habits into good habits and consistently doing things over and over and making sure that, and I see it in the rinks. There's some coaches that are dads that don't know the game, and being invested in that and teaching them, because if my dad was my coach when I was a youth hockey player, I probably wouldn't be where I am right now. I was lucky to have good coaches that played at a high level, and so it'll be a lot of that. I actually am going to head to Brazil to help their Learn to Play program in November for about a week. So traveling internationally a little bit too, just kind of educating other countries and seeing what other countries are doing that we can, take from them and learn. And I will be the head coach for the Five Nations team next year, which is the '09s. So you'll see me in Buffalo. So I'll be there for the 16s next year as the head coach, and we play in Germany next year. So there's a lot under that umbrella, but I will absolutely know more. But it's everything I believe in and everything that I'm excited for. So it's a great opportunity.
Brazil. That's
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
yeah.
When Team Brazil beats Team USA in like 25 in the 2058 Olympics, we're gonna look back at this and be like, that's where the seeds were planted. Another superpower for hockey. That's incredible though. Are there other countries that you're gonna be doing that with, you think, over the next couple years?
I'm sure. I know that they deal with like a lot of other countries that are just started, like like it's Learn to Play, like it's something that that USA Hockey is trying to expand. We obviously go to other countries like Sweden and Finland, trying to see what they're doing, right, to make us better. But they just asked me immediately on day one, like, hey, are you available to go to Brazil? And I was just like, yeah. I mean, I think we would have been playing Maine at that point, so I'll go to Brazil for sure. But yeah, no, it's going to be hard for me to say no to really anything. But obviously, I'm going to be in and out of the rinks, and you guys will obviously still see me.
I don't know, Pat. Maine or Brazil? That's a tough call. I don't
It
know.
is
I
a
don't know
tough
where I'd rather
call.
go in November. It's interesting because you mentioned being an undersized player and having a ton of success as an undersized player, and we see it now with so many different up and coming prospects who are undersized. Some know how to make an impact, and some sort of struggle to gain eyes of recruiters or whoever. What worked with your mindset that you feel you can give to the next generations of players who are a bit undersized in helping them reach that next level?
Yeah, so I mean, you had guys like in the beginning that were a little bit older than me, but like a guy like Brian Gianta, who I looked up to. Obviously, he was a BC guy, but just knowing the smaller guys out there, I was like, man, how is this kid, like? Why is it he's doing this? Why is he able to do this? I mean, the way I looked at it, and the way my dad always looked at it too, is he was more into boxing, but he was like, you got to be competitive. Like that's like number one. That's not even something we really ask anymore about kids. It's either you're going to be competitive or you're not. You're going to get weeded out very quickly if you're not competitive. But being smaller as a 5'6" guy, and then you have your 6'5" guy that's on the ice, immediately both of those guys are recognized. Like, oh, there's the small guy and there's the big guy, right? Like, oh, the big guy, let's watch him. But then you notice the small guy because he's small. So now you have that visual already from everybody watching. Now it's on you to do what you do, right? So the competitive piece was always something that stuck with me at a very young age, for sure. I think that obviously helped me. It was kind of changing the game a little bit when I was kind of coming through college to pro. It was still kind of a bigger man's game, but smaller guys were making their way in. Um, And to be honest, like the coaching that I had at such a young age, the teaching me the game itself, like away from the puck, shaped me who I was. And that is obviously something that USA Hockey's talked about in the past, and something that obviously now I'm invested in trying to help the younger generations, and not just stick handle in and out of cones and be so one dimensional, that the majority of the game you're not playing with the puck. And it's like, what are you doing without the puck? So being smart and understanding the game, you can teach kids that at a young age. Like there's a lot of times where people say like, oh, he's got a God-given talent, like he can only see it that way. It's like, no, he was programmed at a young age. These kids are like sponges. If I try to learn a new language right now, it would take me forever. I might not even learn it. But I can tell my 6-year-old, I can throw him in a German school and he'll learn German within a year. Like, so you can teach these kids, and that's the beauty of it, and why I love this job, is because I'm going to be with these young kids all the time, and these coaches, and you can relay that message. It's something that I think as a country in USA Hockey we can get better at. Why is it that Massachusetts has the same number of youth hockey players as all Finland? Like we should, the state of Mass should be just as good as Finland, but clearly we're not, right? We need the whole country. So, but USA Hockey's been doing a great job of expanding that, message. And, that's a big part of like what made me as a player, was understanding the game away from the puck. And it made it so much easier as a player, because then when I had it, you just saw it differently, and that just stuck with me. And it obviously sticks with me as a college coach, and it'll stick with me as a, someone developing younger players and players in the future.
The hockey sense piece of it, you hear so much with kids, as they're getting recruited 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, the hockey sense piece isn't there. They're a great skater, but the hockey sense isn't there. Is that too late? Like and I know every kid's different,
Mhm.
but if there is a kid in that 14 to 18 range who does lack that hockey sense, how hard is that to instill in that player?
Yeah, you start getting into that age, like it can become a little tricky, but you still, you can still teach an old dog new tricks. Like it's the habits of doing it over and over. Again, the older you get, the harder that language is going to be to learn, right? So, but those kids can still, they can change their habits. And yeah, okay, they might not see it like Sidney Crosby sees it. I get it. But again, like you can teach them certain things and put them in situations that will make them see the game in that way. But it's putting him in those situations over and over and over. If we just start a drill and say, go around the cone, pass the coach and shoot, and we do that over and over, that's all the kid's going to get used to, is going around the cone. He looks at the puck, pass the coach. But we all know that that's not the game. Yes, okay, it's edge work, it's your hands, where are you? There's all the details that go into the game. But like the majority of the game is like observing and thinking of what's going on around you and how quick you can react to those situations. And, putting kids in that environment at a younger age is going to help. And then as they get older, I mean, we still do it with our college guys, or in the pro guys do it. It's just constantly putting them in those situations all the time, not just doing it once or twice. It's the same thing with like my diet. Like I could do my diet for a week and be like, I'm on a diet, everybody. But then a month goes by and I'm not on it. It's like, well, why is my belt a little tight? Well, I only did it for a week. But if I do it for 6 months, I probably will stick with it, because now I've created that habit. So I feel it's the same way with these kids. You just got to be over and over and over, and you got to have the right people relaying that message to the kids.
Yeah, the dieting element of it. Dieting, hockey sense, it's the same thing. I like
Yeah.
that. It
Hey,
drives it home.
it's all discipline. It's discipline at the end of the day. Your diet, it's discipline. Are you disciplined to buy into what these coaches are telling you? And hopefully it's the right message that the coaches are telling you too. But it is discipline at the end of the day, especially your diet.
Yeah, it definitely is. Um, you mentioned Massachusetts having the same number of youth hockey players as Finland, and obviously it's tough to compare because it's completely different markets and things like that. But Massachusetts and New England as a whole, and obviously they're separate districts for USA Hockey. You look at, two locals made the Halinka team this year. Two local kids made Five Nations. Two local kids made the National Development Program. And I think some people are wondering, why is the region not churning out as many kids making it on these national teams? Now, some of them are baffling. Some kids, you wonder, how did they not make it? But others did. And there's different reasons for it. What does something need to change where our region is getting better representation nationally at those events, or have other non-traditional markets just been producing better players than they used to?
Yeah, I don't think that when these kids, I truly believe that the kids that do make these, even from my level doing the regionals, right? In Attleboro, where you have the 17s and 16s, for example, for that group, like we have, almost 13 to 15 Division I college coaches there evaluating and picking the kids. So there's no skin in the game for those coaches. If there is kind of any overlap of a coach that has a committed player on one of those teams that he's evaluating, or age group, we just move him to the other age group. So there's no skin in the game. We do feel that we do get it right. Of course, you might miss a kid that doesn't make it for 15s and 16s and ends up making the 17s. So you hear the stories of like guys that never made it through that play in the NHL. Everybody's developing at a different time. But I truly feel that USA Hockey and at the lower levels of like what I was doing, we get the right kids to Buffalo. And then the USA, they're gonna pick who they want to pick. But at the end of the day, like I think the majority of players that we're getting that are making these teams are the correct kids. Now, Evan, if you're the head coach of one of these teams, I'd say probably 90% of the kids are going to be the same kids that, Pat picked and Jason Guerriero picked. The other 10% is going to be, you like this player because of this. You like this player because of that. I like this player because he's smaller and does this. Like, so that percentage might be the why people are like, oh, I can't believe he didn't make it. You know, it's hard, but I've been in those, they call them war rooms, where we talk about these players for hours and hours and argue. And at the end of the day, we're all volunteering our time to try to get it right. Like I said, I was a part of this process as a player and doing it on the coaching side. So I do feel, for the first part of your question, that we do get it right. Not everybody agrees. And I do feel that there's so much hockey in this area that, with the clubs, the academies, the town hockey, there's so much hockey in this area that, like if you cut it in half, it's like the same thing with like the North American Hockey League. Like when I played in it, there was only 12 teams. It was a pretty good league, and we played against the USHL. But now there's 30 plus teams. It just kind of gets a little watered down. I think if you shrunk it, you're going to have better players playing with better players. The competition's going to be a little bit better. It's like the same thing when you go recruit. I'm watching a player that's playing against a team and he's winning 10-0. I just walk out of the rink because I'm like, I'm not getting
Yeah.
anything. I'm not getting anything out of that. It doesn't do anything for me. Like so I think it's a little bit of the competition, there's a lot of teams, but at the end of the day, when these kids are like going through the process, we talk about it in our district. It's like a bag of popcorn when you put in the microwave. They all eventually pop, but they're all popping at a different time. One pops right away, and then you're like, is it almost done? And then you turn it off and like you pull the bag out and another one pops. It's like, that's the process with these kids, and everybody
That's the
doesn't.
kid committing in juniors. That's the kid
Yeah,
committing in
it's like I
juniors.
pull the bag out. I'm like, oh, it's so hot, and then one pops. I'm like, oh, there's the overager that's playing junior hockey, right? Like, so and we get caught up in this, like, oh, this kid popped first, and it's all that noise, and it's something that myself and obviously USA Hockey tries to, promote. It's just like, you just got to understand and respect the process, because it's different for everybody. But I do think Mass and New England have done a pretty good job, from the bottom up. But there's always, it's like the standard's always going up, right? You always want to be better, and we're trying to make both districts obviously better. And now being a part of it full time, it's a great opportunity for me.
So I thought it was interesting when you mentioned sometimes around here things can get watered down and stuff just because there's so much. And Evan, it made me think of something John Missouri talked about, where it's like maybe for, I don't know, a couple weeks in the summer, you get the best kids in like the X amount of the best 15-year-olds in mass together and just best on best competition for however long a time to, I guess, prepare them for select camp and all that. Do you think that would make any sense at all?
Uh, I mean, I see your angle. I mean, part of it too is like we're just creating more hockey,
Yeah, right.
you
It's a
know, and
double-edged sword.
yeah, it's like you're
Yeah,
creating more hockey, and I see it with a lot of these kids, even like kids that were our recruits, like, or they're like the 16s and 17-year-old kids, like they go to like they finish their teams and then they're training because they have their tryouts for Buffalo. Then they go to Buffalo. Then they end up making it and they got to go to a camp in St. Cloud or Michigan, wherever it is.
yeah,
And then they got to go internationally. And it's like you forget that those months are very important for the kids' development of off ice training, right? And they lose that. And then they get right back into their seasons and they've lost that. And you lose kids a little bit because they get, a little too beat up and now they're starting their seasons again. There's a fine line there for sure. Um, I mean, I see your point. Yeah, it'd be great to
yeah.
say, okay, these are the best 15-year-olds, but then even then, to your point that you guys are talking about, I picked those best 15s in mass, and then you guys are going, well, I can't believe they didn't take this guy. It's like, here we
Right.
go again.
Well, it's
The
funny because
cycle continues.
yes, it's just we always have an issue with it.
Yeah,
It's funny because when people get on that, oh, there aren't enough New Englanders or Massachusetts kids on those national teams. I don't know if I don't think people's issues with who's going from the region. I think it's more so why aren't those kids getting picked for those teams? And obviously, I think non-traditional markets have a lot to do with it. I think 20 years ago, the kid from Tucson, Arizona, was not making like the
Yeah.
Halinka team. But I do wonder, like you brought up a great point, Jason, in the amount of hockey that's here. You have a really good kid playing for South Kent. You have a really good kid playing for St. Mark's, and everyone's kind of scattered. And I mean, there are a lot of prep games that are not crazy competitive. There are a lot of, full season teams, games that are not super competitive. These fall showcases that all three of us are at, there are games that are completely lopsided because there are just so many teams.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that plays a role in it where it's sometimes not the best going against the best?
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. I think there's also like,
And it's
I
not
mean,
all bad, by the way. I don't want to sound like I'm
no,
crushing it. It's
no,
just for
no,
the
yeah,
not
context
at
of this
all. Not
question.
at all. I think it's great because you give a lot of kids opportunity to stay in the sport and kids that, like maybe are overlooked, but then just slowly chip away, and that's development, right? And kids play the sport because they have fun, right? So if I hope that's why they're playing it, right? So there is a lot. I think if you cut some of the fat, like yeah, the competition would be better. Um, but to your point, like there is a lot of really good hockey players. And when we all watch games, which you guys know, it all is pretty much vanilla. They all kind of look the same. It's like, my sister that knows nothing about hockey can go into the rink and be like, ooh, that kid looks really good. It's like, yeah, we all know that. All right. After that, let's figure it out. And there's just like, you're this close, but you're also this close, right? So there's a lot of really good hockey players. It's just a matter of, what's going to separate you from the pack, and it's from a recruiting standpoint, and we talk about all the time, there's certain kids that might not be this high end player, but his details are on. That kid will play college hockey all day for somebody. And their normal eye might not see that, but guys that are in the business, we see that. And what's attract us to that player.
Pat, do you have anything else on development?
just kind of going back when you were talking about, developing, the play away from the puck and putting kids in different situations. When you were in any situation as a coach, whether it was in college or anywhere else, what are some of the things that like you feel are, I guess, best at bringing that out of kids, whether it's film, something on the ice during practice, both, all the above?
Yeah, I mean, it depends with age appropriate, right? Like if I
Mhm.
my 6U kid, my little Johnny, like if I tried to show him video, he would just be like trying to click to YouTube. Like,
Yeah.
so there's no point, right? So the ages vary of what it is, but I do feel like as the kids start to get a little bit older, and I don't know the appropriate age, but film and video for kids, like, when you're 14 years old, those U14, 15 kids, like all the camps that I've run. So like when I run the one up in Keene where we do the 14s for the district, I am showing those kids video and teaching them the game away from the puck. And then when they go into the games, I'm on the bench making sure that they're doing what we just talked about. And it's not just Jason Guerrero putting up his hand saying, this is how I want you guys to play. It's like, this is how the game is played
Mhm.
at the low level, all the way to the NHL level. So for me, it's a little bit of the video. And again, the video sessions are never long. It's just to the point in understanding the game. Like, we talked about it at Northeastern a lot too, and it was the same way as me as a player. Like, if you can win the middle of the ice, you most of the time will win hockey games. That's offensively and defensively. As a forward, I was always trying to get to the middle of the ice because that's where I can make plays. Obviously, the net's in the middle of the ice when you really think about it. And defensively, if you get stuck outside, the middle's open, and that's where the puck's always going to go there. At the end of the day, you watch a game, the puck always wants to get to the middle. So from an offensive standpoint, it was like, all right, how do I get to the middle? How do I support the puck in the middle? And that's, if you watch it, that's how the game's played. So then on the defensive side of things, which became even more easier for me to coach, was because I'm just thinking, how do I stop myself? Like, what is it that, it's just the flip side. I always ran the power play. And then when I got to Northeastern, I did the penalty kill. So it's like, all right, well, I always want to get to the middle of the rink. Let's just keep them to the outside, and then obviously there's details and structure to your PK
Mhm.
and all that good stuff. But it's getting kids to understand that, because I don't think that is really being taught. It's just at the young age, it's like, oh, little Johnny can skate. You go do your thing. And it's like, well, you're kind of setting, I get it that kid's good, but you're also setting that kid up just to be very one dimensional, right? Like my little Johnny skating, it's okay, but he didn't skate since last March. He just practiced the other day. But the mindset I'm trying to create with him, Johnny's one of my kids, is just that always be trying to make a play. Like, just get it and just be looking around, right? So you don't become so one dimensional and now it's going to be, introducing like skating and keeping your head up, like stuff like that. But processing and the game for a 6-year-old, again, it's learning that new language. He knows nothing about hockey, nothing. But I'm just teaching him something new, and he's adapting to it as a young kid. So I get to do that with his other coaches and players. It's kind of funny. His coaches, is Patrice Bergeron, myself, and a former player that played at BU, Brian Collins, and Rick
Huh.
Mascucci. So it's quite the coaching staff.
Yeah,
So it's
pretty
kind of
good.
fun.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow. That's a lot of those kids are all going to be great 200-foot
Yeah, so Johnny's
players.
gonna win a Selkie trophy one day.
Yeah. And Bergeron's kid is going to be probably the best face-off guy. We can all assume that.
Yes. Oh my God. It's got to be in the genetics. Well, it's like when I was a kid, like you learned, to cover the front of the net. If you just say front of the net to a 6-year-old, it doesn't mean anything. So it was like, that's your house. You got to protect the house. You don't let
Yeah.
anybody in the house. That's what it is. And then it's like, oh yeah, we got to protect the house. And it stays with you. Like, and I think it's an interesting way when it comes to coaching that age where you have to make it relevant to them and relative to them. So that's awesome. Well, I'll look forward to watching when they're all like U14s 6 years from now. That'll be really fun. Um, I want to get into the recruiting element because obviously you're coming off of a long stretch, not just as an assistant at Northeastern, but you were at Brown for a long time. You were at Yale. You were at Holy Cross. You've recruited talent for a while, and I know you and I have had these conversations both on and off the record. What were some of the big challenges? I mean, I know it's only been like a week that you've, I guess, been off the recruiting trail. What what were some of the big challenges, and what do you see as some of the big challenges um, for kids looking to get recruited? I mean, what are some of the things that they have to overcome to get eyes and looks?
Yeah. I mean, it's cliche, but it's like you go watch a kid once and he plays really well. So you're like, oh, okay. You know, you maybe do a little background check. You text a coach, good kid. Yep, sounds good. Coach promotes him, likes him. All right. You go back, you watch the kid again, doesn't play too well. And you're like, you know, and then you watch him and he plays well. And then he doesn't play well. And there's that inconsistency in the kid's game. And again, there's so many check boxes in that's going through a recruiter's head, a coach's head that, okay, he can do this well. He does this well. You know, my wife makes fun of me. We would basically, I'm basing my livelihood off of 14 to 21-year-olds, trying to figure out, is this kid going to be good enough when he gets to college and after? So that is all going through your head, trying to say, okay, I like this kid. He's not going to get to us for another 2 or 3 years. By his sophomore year, we'll call it 5 or 6 years. Yep, this kid is going to be pretty good. It's like, whew. So it's the consistency of the kid. Every time you watch him, he's doing the same thing. And in little ticks, he's getting better. You know, there's kids that are just elite when they're 14, but you can kind of see that everybody's kind of catching up a little bit. And that kind of, it doesn't scare a college coach, but it's just the reality of like, I don't think that kid's going to get much bigger. He doesn't seem to have that competitive edge. He was always able to skate really fast when he's little. Everybody's kind of caught up. Those are pieces to the puzzle that we put together as recruiters. But you've got to be able to do something that's going to separate you from the pack. You know, it's either like you could be this great face-off guy. You know, like you can. Not everybody's going to be the guy that's going to be on the power play and have the most goals. Like I wish I actually was 6'2" and just played an up and ice north-south game. I probably would have played a lot longer than trying to be a 5'6" skill guy, because if I'm a 5'6" skill guy and I need to get called up to the NHL, at the time I'm taking Jason Arnott's spot. But that's not happening. Like you know, it's just not happening. But you know, so it's the kids like understanding their identities as hockey players, obviously always trying to get better and make mistakes and grow in the game, but also respecting the game and playing the game the right way is going to get you to the next level. And I think it's important that kids also don't just think like, oh, I'm playing U15, and they're thinking about what college they're going to, right? Like everybody's in a rush. It's like, just be present where you are, right? Just enjoy the moment that you're in. Be a good hockey player today, be better today than you were yesterday. And that's really all you can control. But as these kids are getting into the rinks and us coaches and recruiters are watching, it's the nature of the beast that you've got to do something that's going to separate you from the pack. And it's hard. I mean, there's so many, like I said, I can go into all the little details of like, you know, kids not having good stick skills. And those things are obviously all teachable. But that's the competitive part where it's either you can play when it gets to a certain point where we're going to commit the kid, or you just might be a Division III, might be club hockey, and that's fine. But I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but I know it's pretty low of kids that are fortunate enough to play Division I and Division III hockey. It's not easy.
Do you, and because you've said to me before, you know, that you sort of wish kids didn't post about their commitments, because then it's sort of, you know, everybody else sees it, and, you know, kids feel pressure and stress levels and things like that. Now that you're out of it, do you wish that there were do you wish recruiting was a little bit different from the coach's side of things too? Or did it work well for you, or anything you'd like to kind of see changed in the whole process?
I mean, it's always changing. It definitely wasn't what I signed up for when I first started this way back with Paul Pearl at Holy Cross. You know, obviously we all know the advisors and agents play a big part of it. You know, social media and all that. I mean, it just from when I was a player, you just played. I showed up and I was like, you look down the other side of the ice during warmups, you're like, ooh, they look big. And that was it. And you played. There wasn't really any like, oh, worrying about him. The stress level for these kids is through the roof. It's like almost like every time they go on the ice, it's like a job interview for them. And, you know, I think we're all created the problem a little bit as, you know, club teams, coaches, agents, parents. Um, yeah, it's not that I would change anything with recruiting. Recruiting's recruiting. You're always gonna have to be in a rink, and but it's now just been more of, you know, the advisors are a big piece of it, right? Like they're pushing their players, and I get it. That's part of the business. But I knew there was a problem when you offer a kid, and the kid usually, like when Northeastern offered me or UNH offered me, I said, let me call my parents. And now it's turned into, let me call my agent. And it's like, you're 15. Like, so, and hey, the agents out there and the advisors, there's some great individuals, people that I truly love that are good people. And there's some that are just doing it because, just like any other business, they see a market to make money, but it's not in the best interest for some of these kids to have advisors and agents. And, so we can go back and forth on that, but recruiting's recruiting. I don't think that's ever going to change. I think the landscape is changing just because of the whole major junior thing. And that's going to be probably a piece that colleges are going to end up recruiting. But no, there's nothing I would change. It's just changing. And I don't really agree with it the way it's going.
I remember Carl Corzini recently said to me, he was like, yeah, when I was getting recruited, I think he said he changed his mind like 3 straight days. Like one day it was Harvard, the next day was at one school, and then the next school. And I'm like, man, that would have been like 3 days of headlines of like Carl Corzini committed to Harvard. No, Carl Corzini decommits to Harvard, goes to BU instead. Like, but it's the way it is now, where that would be some big news. But
Yeah, like
It's
so it was sorry to cut you off. So
no, you're good.
I committed to Northeastern in my 20-year-old year of juniors and down in Texas for the Texas Tornado. And obviously didn't have a cell phone at the time. It was 2000. I think I had one, but it was like only for emergencies. And I was with a housing family, committed, went on my visit. And it was like 3 days after I got back from my visit, I got a call from the BU coach. And he was like, hey, Jason, just want to know if you want to come for a visit. And in my head, I was like, no, I committed Northeastern. He's like, well, we'll be seeing you. I was like, thanks, goodbye. And that was it. But now if that phone call happened from Northeastern and another school called, let me call my agent and see if something's better, the deal's better. It's put a lot of thoughts in people's heads, and that's better than this, and the transfer portal, and go here and do that, and sense of tradition and loyalty is just gone. And it's like I said, it's not what I signed up for so many years ago in college hockey, but just like anything else, things are always changing, and you're not always going to be able to agree with it, or but it's just from the development side of it and the tradition and the loyalty part, that's not what I got into. And why, like Jamie Rice, the head coach at Babson, he's the one who mainly recruited me and made me a better hockey player at Northeastern, better person, and haven't met a more loyal or better person out there in this business. And that's what I surrounded myself with. And obviously the game has now changed. So I was lucky to get this opportunity, and now it's not my problem.
Yeah, it's interesting, to look at social media for recruiting in hockey compared to other sports. Because in hockey, it's, a kid commits and they post, and then it's sort of like, the peer pressure and you're seeing what other kids are doing. But if you look at basketball and like baseball and football, every time a kid gets an offer, not or like a visit, it's posted. I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine the additional amount of pressure if it was like that with hockey too. But sort of going along with like the transfer portal and like just the way everything's changed for you towards the end in the college ranks, was just with how everything's changed, was there just almost an element of not only are you recruiting kids at the younger levels, but are you also having to re-recruit your own guys throughout the season?
Yeah. I mean, you're always, like staying in contact with your guys as much as possible, because you just don't know, right? You don't know. It's hard. And now that there's money involved, right? You can lose a player. I again have no regrets of playing at Northeastern, but if some other school offered my family, $50,000, pretty sure my dad, who never went to college and was a construction guy, would say, hey, you take that full and we'll take the 50. Sounds good. So there is that element that you always have to be recruiting your own players. You like to think that there's some loyalty there, but it's hard for, like I said, for me, it's a hard thing to really grasp, because you know kids are always thinking, huh, maybe I can go there, or their buddy texts them like, hey, why don't you slide over here? So it's a tough one. It's hard. It really is. But you are constantly recruiting your own players and, trying to keep them happy. And there's a reason why we committed those players. We think that they're difference makers for our program. And, it's not like a kid, we commit someone or teams commit people and say, we're going to cut this kid or decommit this kid in a month. It's no, when the kids commit and the coaches commit, everybody's happy and they want this to work. But, agents, parents, frustration, money, it all takes place. And sometimes it doesn't. It's the chaos of college hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be pretty wild to commit a kid. Just we're gonna decommit him in a month. That would
No,
that
yeah,
wouldn't really fly on the
Yeah, sorry,
recruiting.
this other guy decommitted. We want him instead.
but the crazy part is that you can like, and I wouldn't play it this way, but it's definitely out there where kids like, all right, I really want to go to Northeastern, I really do, okay, but school B offer me. Well, I can go to school B, and if it doesn't work out and I do well, I could still go to Northeastern. Like that's where the tradition for me and the loyalty of college hockey is just gone, because you can do that, and it's just, I get it. It's about the student athlete experience, but I just wish it was 4 years tradition. Like you just losing players in those schools, and I truly feel in the end you'll lose generations of donations from alums because you're just not going to have that connection to that school anymore.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's kind of two sides to that coin you mentioned, like about the kids' perspective, where for our upcoming magazine, I just did something on Atlantic hockey, where for outsiders it seems like it's a bit of a feeding ground for, or some kids might see it, for any small school really, like it's a stepping stone. I'll go prove myself here, and I'll get a chance to transfer somewhere bigger. Um, and but on the flip side of that, you have because I talked to Scott McDougall at Sacred Heart, and it was really interesting. Mikey Adamson, who's there, who transferred from UMass, was a kid they pushed for really hard initially, and then they established that connection, and then Adamson enters the transfer portal, and they already have this connection. So it kind of, and then he comes to Sacred Heart and does very well. So it's interesting to see like both sides of that coin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, we can talk about that all day. The
Yeah,
transfer portal, it could go on forever.
it's an entirely different podcast.
Yeah.
It's yeah, and I think you even see with the last you see the lack of loyalty. I think it does also hurt smaller end schools, or schools that are trying their best to improve their stature. Lower level teams in Hockey East or in the ECAC, where even if they commit a really good kid or a kid that pops later on, that kid might not end up there. And I think that's another end of it too. But I've talked to a lot of coaches who just kind of say that's the way it is. Like
Yeah.
everybody loses out on guys and everybody benefits from it. Like do you see that as well, where like you might lose out on one kid, but you grab another and it sort of evens the playing field a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know if it really ever evens the playing field, because I think
Yeah.
college hockey has just done such a really good job in the recent years before this portal of just like anybody could beat anybody. You see about like the, teams that have even won the national championship in the last decade, like, I mean, even when Union, Yale, like those are like, those are like going to be hard now, because you could just, if you're a good player at that school and you can get picked to go to another school, it's just, there's going to be that separation, I feel. But like I said before, it's changing, and you're either in it or you're not, and you can agree with it or disagree with it. It's still changing, and you've got to just adapt. And you know, um, like obviously I disagree with the way it's going, but if I was still at Northeastern, I'd adapt and figure it out. But yeah, it's tough.
If the CCHL stuff goes through, which it seems like it is at some point going to happen, a lot of people obviously mentioned kind of the impact it's going to have on college, in terms of do new Division One programs pop up? Someone mentioned to me yesterday it might be harder for local kids who are fringe Division One players. That they're probably definitely going to be Division Three guys. But I'm more curious, like, do you think? And again, this is a big trickle down effect. Do you think that could affect prep at all? Where, you know, are kids, are high-end Canadian kids not going to come here? Are they going to stay in Canada to play juniors because they know they can play NCAA later on? Or do you think that, you know, prep and full season academy teams here will be unaffected? Where are you sort of at on that?
You know, that's a tough one because like you can again like do the prep schools and these academies, do they adapt, right? You know, I think it'll be difficult for some more than others maybe. But when something changes, right? Everybody else goes, "Ooh, okay, we need to change, we need to adapt," you know, or this isn't working for us, we're done. Um, a lot of people ask me that just in passing in the rinks, like how it's going to look, and I really don't know. I mean, we can again go all day. Like it's going to be really interesting if that does open up and how it's going to structure. Like how's the USHL going to look? How's the national program going to look? Like how there's so many questions, theories and rumors, but I don't really have like a strong opinion on that because I just don't know. I really don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, it is a big unknown. Pat, before we do overtime, do you have any more on recruitment?
No, I think I covered it all.
Perfect. I think we hit on everything. So why don't we do some overtime? And I'll
Overtime.
Yes, welcome back to Overtime, where we have 3 questions that all of our panelists are completely unprepared for, and they are shaking in their skates, I assure you. Today we borrow from a different talk show on ESPN that I stole this format from, so sorry, guys. You need to finish this sentence. This sentence will have to do with hockey, obviously, and then we'll end in a blank. So in other words, hockey is blank. Let's not do that one. Too simple. But you'll each answer it and then explain why that's your word. So, Jason, you're the guest. You get to go first. And the first question is, employing a shootout to break a tie game in hockey is blank. I'll repeat that so you have time to think about it. Employing a shootout to break a tie game in hockey is blank. What say you, Jason?
No way a coach likes to end a hockey game.
And give us a little more color on that, please.
I just feel that in shootouts at the end of the game to decide a game, you could be playing so well and deserve to win that game. I understand there's wins and losses. That someone that really doesn't impact the game, but because they just have this sick move and they can shoot and score, they can dictate the entire game. I don't think that's really hockey. I mean, I get it's a piece of it, but I like the traditional 5-on-5, 5 minutes play, tie.
Evan, let's go to you. Employing a shootout to break a tie game of hockey is
dumb. I don't like it. I've never liked it. Everything Jason just said. Like you have a full game, do 3-on-3, do 2-on-2. I had a tournament when I was little, had a 1-on-1, full ice 1-on-1. Like even that. I mean, at least there's an element of competition. So yeah, I'm not a fan.
And Pat, your word?
Yeah, not great. I'd echo everything everybody else just said. Evan and I talked about it plenty during the MIAA playoffs, and it's like, you know, you want to end it on a hockey play, not on a skills competition.
All right, excellent answers all around. Pat, you can go first on this next one. Finish the sentence. On a scale of 1 to 10, a goalie's importance to a team's success is blank. On a scale of 1 to 10, a goalie's importance generally to a team's success is what?
This answer kind of depends on who the last cup winner was year to year. I'd say probably a 7, because we've seen last couple of years, you know, like Colorado won the Stanley Cup kind of in spite of Darcy Kemper. But at the same time, you get Tim Thomas, who was on the other end of the spectrum, who just did everything for that Bruins team. So a goalie can easily sink you, but it sometimes might not be the only reason you win.
All right, Evan, goalie's importance on a scale from 1 to 10?
I'd go with an 8. It's important. As Pat said, it can sink you. A 10, because that I think sort of implies you have to have like an elite, you have to have Devin Levi in that, which is a nice thing to have, but not every team can have that. You would need, at least need very good goaltending to make good runs. So I would say an 8.
And coach, your thoughts? Scale of 1 to 10.
I'm going to go with 10, guys. I think it's as a player, I was like, go find the best skilled forward like D. Yeah. As a coach, all day you start your team with the best possible goalie, and he gives you the best possible chance to win. I'm all day 10. If there was an 11, I'd say 11. Obviously, you need good players in front of you, but a goalie's going to take you the distance at the end of the day.
Excellent. And final question on overtime. This is a little bit out of the box, but roll with it, kids. Using a soccer-style relegation system where teams finishing poorly would face demotion to a lower league in hockey would be blank. Using a soccer-style relegation system where teams finishing poorly in a league would face demotion to a lower league would be what? Jason, why don't you go first?
Would be awesome. I actually played in that situation in Europe because they do that. I was playing in the second league in Germany, and we played Munich in the finals. And if we won, we would have went up to the DEL, but we lost. So we stayed down. Obviously, in the second league, they moved up to the first, and obviously the bottom end teams. The bottom team played against the third league, and then they lost. So they went to third league. The third league went to second league. So I'm all for it. I like it. Keeps you on your toes. Keeps you honest for sure. I like it.
I love that answer. Evan, relegation in hockey would be blank.
I'm assuming we're talking in terms of pro, like with NHL, not college.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, have fun in Division 3 Northeastern. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
What you could do. I mean, it is set up to do that in college, but you can answer the question any way you like.
I'll say I'll keep it pro.
Okay.
Dramatic. It would be, and it would be a reason to watch. You know, when San Jose plays Anaheim at 10 p.m., most people are like, why would I care about that game? Not the case in this situation, because it would be for relegation, which is the ultimate humiliation. In terms of Twitter, you would be crushed, and it would make things very fun. So I would say dramatic. It's like a reality show. I like it. Yeah.
Well, Evan, I know you're a fan of documentaries, and I know I've recommended the documentary on Netflix called Losers to you. It's an 8-episode chronicle of just completely different sports and completely different situations, and it's about losing. But there was one where an entire town was cheering on their soccer team, who had gone 3-16 that season, but they needed to win or tie to preserve their spot in the league. If they dropped out, they would move to a league that wouldn't be financially. It was basically they're playing for the future, very future of the team. It couldn't have been more dramatic. So we could have that, yes, in some random San Jose game. Pat, your thoughts? Relegation in hockey would be?
Pro, kind of like everyone else, and what Evan said, the drama, and kind of because stealing from the soccer podcast answer a little bit.
Yes, right. I asked you this question in soccer.
Yeah, like what Jason said, it keeps everybody honest, and the Oilers, when they were so futile for so long, would have been in the SPHL at some point. It would stop the Orioles from mailing it in the MLB, the Sixers, and it would just keep everybody honest, and you'd get probably a better product out of it.
Excellent. All right, relegation. Let's do it. Come on, NHL, get on that.
I'm sure they'd love Connor Bedard in the lower league. The NHL would be dying for that. Yeah, that would go over well.
The lower league would enjoy it. Great job all around. Evan, back to you to wrap things up.
Well, this has been fun. Jason, thank you so much for joining, and congratulations on the new job. I'm sure Pat and I will see you around the rinks quite a bit. And that's been this episode of RinkWise. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Patrick Donnelly. We will see you all at the rink.